welcome to episode 42 of Last Turn. I think in some book, 42 is supposedly like the most important number in the universe or something. Is that true, Evan?
I think you're confusing. No, it's in a movie with Jim Carrey, the number 23. In that movie, the number 23, the number 42 is really important.
Oh, wasn't it like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or am I
Yeah,
just
it's
crazy?
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
being
see.
a jerk. I don't even have a good word for what I was doing. I was
You
being Jim Carrey.
you were gaslighting me. You totally could have. I think that's the word. You totally could have actually carried that through, and I wouldn't have known the difference because I don't think I've seen either
Well then, I mean, I
or read
actually
either.
have. I also haven't. I have not seen either. So I could have
Great,
even carried myself.
nice.
That would have been nice.
Um, I'm Bart, and I'm joined by Evan today. How are you doing today?
Besides very confused due to my own misbehavior, I'm great, and even that's a good time. How are you doing?
I'm also doing really well. I have been really enjoying the priest list that you shared.
I'm
Um,
really glad to hear it.
yeah, I think you should definitely tell our listeners about it. So I have not encountered it on the ladder, like as an opponent, but I've definitely rolled people with it and gotten a lot of friend requests. So I'd love to you should explain it.
Yeah, so it. I originally saw it on Savage's channel or Ceviche on his channel, and I'm pretty sure that's how he pronounces it. Anyway, so the first time I saw the priest deck was on Savage's Twitch channel, and he was calling it Big Priest, but it really plays a lot differently than like the classic Big Priest from before Boomsday. Or I guess was it before the rotation? Uh,
Yeah, it was pre-rotation because it had Barnes in it.
right. Okay. So there's a Big Priest deck that used Obsidian statues, and it would cheat them out with Barnes and revive them. This you're using Prophet Valen and Malagos basically as your finishers instead of Obsidian statues. You've got two Mind Blasts, and you also use Lich King. And you are either trying to Shadow Essence some of these guys out or just play them from your hand, or the dream is to play Zarek's Cloning Gallery and get a bunch of them out all at once. Um, and then if your opponent manages to not die after you play these cards, you just revive them with Diamond Spellstones. And then if they kill them, you just revive them again with Eternal Servitude or another Spellstone. But eventually they can't kill a Valen or a Malagos or something, and you just explode their face with Mind Blasts.
Yep, it's
That's the basic gist of it.
right. Um, yeah, the deck has a lot of play to it. There's so many different lines that I just like didn't appreciate until I had played it for 30 games or so.
It's a really complicated deck.
Yeah.
Um, is it good? Kind of. It's definitely at least kind of good because I climbed from 3 to 2 with it, and now I'm at two. I lost 2 and went back to 3, and now I'm at 3 stars in rank 2.
Hmm.
I got rank 2 back, so it's beating people in between rank 2 and 3 pretty consistently. Um, but it's not the most consistent deck. It's got Lich King, Valen, Malagos, 2 Spellstones, and the Zarek's Cloning Gallery, so you can have a bunch of real you can have an awkward draw with a bunch of expensive
Oh
cards.
yeah.
But the nut play is to have both of your Radiant Elementals still in your deck when you play Zarek's Cloning Gallery, so your spells will cost 2 less, and to also have Valen and Malagos also still in your deck, and to also have 2 Mind Blasts in your hand.
Right.
If all of these stars align, which actually for the first time it happened last night, um, when you play Cloning Gallery, you just deal 40 damage and win the game.
Yeah.
Because your Malagos makes your Mind Blast do 10, Valen makes it doubled and do 20, and they both cost 0 from your Radiant Elementals. You might even get more spells. You're also running Lyra, so you might even hit another Mind Blast
Yep.
if
Yeah.
your opponent has a ton of armor.
I've definitely like won a
Um,
lot of games like that where you just get out multiple Radiant Elementals, or like you have 2 out and then you Vivid Nightmare one of them, and then you just go ham with Lyra, like try to beef up your hand with damaging spells. Really good against Warrior, actually.
Yep, that's definitely something that I've done against Warrior, and one of the other good things the deck can do to try to win is just play a Lyra and get a ton of better stuff in your hand.
Yeah.
Really, that'll put the pedal to the metal for your spellstone upgrades.
Yes, definitely.
So there's a lot of use in that. You're also using Gilded Gargoyle, which at first looks really bad, but it's actually really good in the deck.
Yeah,
Right?
I was really surprised by that too. When I saw it in the list, I'm like, oh, that's like really dumb and greedy. Like, do you really want a coin for cloning gallery? But no, it actually just does a whole lot for you.
Just for most people, because who knows what Gilded Gargoyle does?
Right.
It's a 3-mana, 2/2 Death Rattle minion and priest that gives you a coin when it dies.
Yes.
And that's really good because playing something like Shadow Essence or Zarek's Cloning Gallery a turn earlier can be really big. And you also have Lyra. And playing a coin with Lyra is awesome because you're getting mana to play another spell and you're getting another spell to play at the same time for 0 mana. And it also will accelerate your spellstones or upgrade your spellstones. So the coin does a whole lot. And it's cool that off of the cloning gallery you'll get a couple of gargoyles sometimes to give you some more spells, or they can just be a body. They give you something to do early game.
Yes.
I have not had the mirror match yet. I've only been playing this deck. Because it's really, really fun.
It's really fun. I switched to Hunter briefly for a quest, but then right back to this deck.
And this deck has 2 Psychic Screams, which makes it really good against something like Cube Hunter, at least.
Yes.
Or any kind of cubey thing. You can not only do you have the 2 Screams, but 2 Shadow Visions to possibly get even more. But I searched hashtag Hearthstone decks on Twitter, which I do sometimes to get inspiration. And I saw someone tweeting in like Portuguese or something, and with a very similar deck.
Nice.
And they like had a picture of getting legendary and stuff. And the big difference. So the list that I showed you that I had been playing had a Blood Mage Thalnos. This instead has Ziliax.
Yeah, I saw I saw the link in our Discord about your replay, and it had Ziliax in your deck. I was like, you drew it, and I was like, wait, what? What is this? What is this doing? That seems worse than Binding Heal.
So it's amazing.
Okay.
It's so good against an aggressive deck, which is your only bad matchups, really. Like
that's true.
You can really sort of manipulate your hand because it's sort of like Rizakis in that you're gonna win with stuff in your hand, not stuff that's on the board. So if your opponent's trying to interact with you to win, like a control deck, they're not gonna succeed. So aggro is really hard to beat for the deck.
It is. So just to put some numbers on that, I wanted to comment on this.
Yeah.
I have 4 games against Paladin and 0 wins. And
okay, I assume those were all odd paladins.
They were all odd paladins. I have 8 games against Rogue and 1 win, and that was against the Malagos Rogue. The rest were odd Rogue, and they all beat me. So this deck is, at least in the iteration I was playing, pretty bad against aggro.
Yeah, I have I have fewer numbers, I guess. I don't see where the total is.
You can it's if you go to the stats menu and click active deck only, you can see a bunch.
Yeah, it's so I definitely like have been the point is I've been crushing warriors and definitely not crushing rogues, being on the other side of crushing.
Sure.
Yeah, 24% against rogue.
Nice.
Oh wait, no, that's how often I played against rogue. I'll figure this out later. So,
yeah, that's fine.
Point is Ziliax rocks against odd rogue.
That's really cool. Yeah, so I guess when I first saw it in the list, I was thinking like, oh, that's like a really clunky Binding Heal. But then I thought about it, after you mentioned it's really good against aggro, and it does actually kill something. So it's doing something a lot better than Binding Heal, and your opponent has to respect it. So it might even kill 2 things.
It's kind of like, I think it's almost more Sludge Belchery than Giggling Inventor. Well, actually not. It's its own thing, but
yeah.
It will heal you for 3, kill a minion, and then absorb an attack and heal you for another 3.
Huh.
So it's really good on the board against an aggressive deck. It's just excellent. And then after you do that, later you'll play a Spellstone and you'll get your Ziliax back. and it'll be an aggressive deck, and you'll be really, really, really happy to have your Ziliax back. If you're playing against a control deck, then just don't play your Ziliax if you don't
Sure.
have to. But
Yeah, and
if
I
you
guess
are, then you can not only kill their guy when you play Spellstone and get Ziliax back. I also Eternal Servitude to Ziliax against a rogue, and that was really good.
yeah, that's really nice. So that's that card has been pretty dead in a lot of aggro matchups, and I guess that makes it less dead. So that's really
Hmm.
interesting. I'm gonna try that. Okay, you sold me. So I definitely thought it was really weird when I saw it in your replay, but I'm convinced by this. I guess also uh, sometimes your Shadow Essence will get it, and that's pretty cool.
Hmm. I
That's
was
not.
about to say, if you're not sold yet, Shadow Essence into a 5/5 Ziliax is what
Yeah,
I have
I
not
mean,
gotten to do that. I also have what I wanna do is Cloning Gallery a Ziliax out like a 1/1, and then draw him and
magnet
magnetize. Yeah.
magnetize it. That's the
Or
dream.
Shadow Essence to 5/5, and after the Divine Shield is gone, magnetize another one on.
That's hype.
You would
Um,
definitely get an aggressive opponent to just concede.
yeah, I mean that is pretty unlikely, but definitely because you'd have to like not have it in your hand and then immediately draw it.
Yeah,
But
it's not very likely.
it's still cool to dream about.
Yeah, and the Shadow Essence thing should not be that unlikely. And even like also with the Cloning Gallery, your opponent like is beating you down. In addition to getting a Lich King, maybe also getting a Righteous Protector that has lifesteal, um, and Rush, because that's what Ziliax would be.
Yeah, we should
Um,
definitely, by the way, post this list or some variant of it up on our Twitter afterwards.
yeah, we could do that right after we finish our episode.
Yeah, it's been a blast. I really like this deck.
It's very fun, and it seems like there's room for improvement, but it's got some strength already.
Yeah, I feel like that too. I feel like the flex slots need to be worked out. It needs to be like tuned up a little bit more. But the power level seems like it's there. It's just that like I mean I've been annihilating warriors with it and also priests. Anyone who's like dumb enough to play the priest class has lost to me.
Yeah,
Um,
other priests, those are easy wins.
yeah, they're not playing a good deck. They play like Anduin and they're trying to ping you to death, and you're like, what are you doing? Also, non-zoo warlocks tend to do pretty good against them.
Yeah, because like you're not really OTK, but you can be,
Yes.
and you're not really capped out at 30 damage. You can break 100 if you have to. So warrior is never really completely safe.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, certainly warrior. And somebody who's playing a control warlock, like they're sitting at like 20 health the whole game. You can very easily kill them with just one villain.
Yeah, if you can either like copy him or just have two mind blasts, either or.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
so I had a fun game last night where I managed to get out. So I had two Eternal Servitudes in my hand, and I just played Prophet Velen, and my opponent killed it. Um, and I played then a Radiant Elemental, and I Eternal Servituded back two Velens, and then I Vivid Nightmared one of them. Um, and then I Anti-Magic Shelled them all.
oh my lord, against what was this against?
I don't remember what my opponent was, but
But they evaporated shortly thereafter, I'm
yeah, that
sure.
was a quick game. There were like I think they were some slower deck, like maybe a warrior, and they didn't have any board clears or like a warlock or something like that because they just like couldn't do anything about all my 9/9s.
Hmm.
Well, I guess one of them was like a 9/3 or whatever, but still they lost.
They couldn't be targeted. That's usually enough.
Yep. So it was fun. Um,
Yeah, this deck is a blast.
it is really a mind blast. Uh,
Not
so
all who
um,
wander are lost.
we we can switch gears and talk about what we wanted to talk about our main topic for the day, which is like the opposite of this deck, in my opinion.
Yeah, we now that we got the fun part out, no, it's all gonna be fun. But
It's
yeah,
yeah, it's
very
all gonna be
much
fun.
the opposite concept.
Yes. So here we just told you about a deck that's filled with, I guess, some powerful cards and definitely some garbage, but like crushes people in a really fun way. So we wanted to talk about the most impactful cards in Standard. I think that this is a concept that comes up in Hearthstone discussion all the time. Like, oh, this is one of the strongest cards in Hearthstone. This is one of the strongest cards in Standard. Certainly something we mention a lot. We've talked a bunch about particular cards and why they might be on this list. So we thought that it would make sense to kind of put our money where our mouth is and actually give you our lists.
Yeah, and it's not a very like super clear question, maybe like what is the most impactful Hearthstone card? Because
Right.
there's a lot of different parameters you can look at and different ways you can value things to answer that question. So this is also basically going to be illustrative of how we value the different things. You were saying that you had looked at the stats a lot, right, on
Yes.
HS Replay.
Yeah.
I had kind of intentionally avoided looking at stats about individual card usage frequency
Sure.
because I didn't want to bias myself, and but I did look at stats about decks like on Vicious Syndicate, and which classes were more popular and which classes were winning more and that kind of thing. But my list definitely isn't the seven, or I didn't. If it is the seven most played cards in Hearthstone, it's not because I looked at any list that said what the most played cards in Hearthstone are.
Yeah, I mean, mine certainly is not the seven most played cards in Hearthstone. Like you, I also mostly looked at the decks that were winning as sort of a
Hmm.
gestalt. I think that like that gives you maybe a bird's eye view of the cards that are shaping the metagame, which are not necessarily the ones that are the most frequent. But I also think
Yeah,
that like sometimes the most frequent card is shaping the metagame, or like is at least playing a huge role. So
but the point is that the card that is most played, neither of us think that means it is the most impactful necessarily.
no, certainly not the
Or
most impactful.
like the card that has the highest like in-hand win rate or something. Once again, that's not enough. That I
Yes.
would like to know that. That would probably have an impact on my decision in some way. But what is the most impactful Hearthstone card is more complicated than just one of those stats.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, most certainly. So I think we'll talk a lot about what we mean by impact as this goes on because I think it's sort of deliberately nebulous. And
Hmm.
just to give you guys an idea of the format, the this is going to go like pretty much any list that we make on last turn. We each independently made our list, and we're going to share it sort of in an alternating way. So I guess we haven't talked about that. How does alternating sound, Evan?
That sounds. I have an alternative idea. No, I don't. That's great.
Great. Yeah, I figured they're a little bit too long for us to just sort of go straight through, but
Yeah.
like we do for the set reviews. But so we made a list of seven each. This
Hmm.
way, we're almost certainly going to have overlap because we see Hearthstone pretty similarly, and having seven means that we might, get close to talking about 10 different cards. Maybe we'll see, unless we just talk about seven cards.
It might just be seven.
Um, so
It might be 14. That would be cool.
yeah, that would be really sweet, and also incredibly unlikely. Um,
Yeah, but we'll you never know. We
it's
don't want
true.
to spoil anybody's hopes and dreams.
It's definitely true. Yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of. I also have like sort of a list of runner-ups that might come up, and I'll definitely shout it out if they do come up.
Give them some
But
shout outs, give them some love.
yeah, but so
Shout out to Annoyatron, technically a card that is showing up in a lot of games.
yeah, most impactful card in Standard, Annoyatron. But really, so would you like to start us off with one of the first cards in your list? Mine's not in any particular order, by the way.
Neither is mine, except the first card is a giggling inventor, obviously.
Oh yeah, that's on my list too, right?
And just, the first one I thought of.
Yeah,
For a lot of reasons, I think it is got to be in a lot of decks.
it's the most
And
common card in Hearthstone right now, by the way.
so there you go. So
Yeah.
it was a very logical thing to start with, and I'm not surprised. That's how it seemed just from playing the game and looking at Vicious Syndicate. Um, so it's why is it so impactful? Well, it just changed the aggro game. I think is the biggest the most descriptive way to describe why it's such a big deal. It slows down any aggressive strategy to an immense extent, and it also poses a threat. So
Yes.
it's just this card that control decks picked up that they really like and really helps them both defend against aggressive decks and actually put pressure on. And it actually works really well in a ton of aggressive decks too, like the decks that were already around, like Odd Rogue,
Yes.
and then
Yeah.
it also is really good in other decks like Token Druid that are really really good now. they became better because of Giggling Inventor. So some decks that were really good became even better. Other decks that maybe weren't that good became strong. So in addition to being in a lot of decks, it actually made a lot of them what they are. And
Yeah,
that's what I consider impactful.
yeah, I feel like that too. So this is as a defensive tool, this is amazing. It's like Sludge Belcher. Like I forgot, you might have been the first person who made that comparison, but it was a really striking one, to me at least. It
I'd
was a
like
really
to
striking one.
say I'm the first of all humans to make that comparison.
The first one ever. So it's I mean, it's like Sludge Belcher in that you play it and it's going to take multiple attacks or multiple cards for your opponent to, or some mixture of, for your opponent to like entirely deal with it. So like one of the best, there are kind of two cards that are single card solutions that I can think of, and that's Defile, which is somewhat conditional, and Warpath, which also would be expensive.
Hmm.
So those are, and also somewhat conditional. So
There's
those are
Mossy
like,
Horror.
yeah, Mossy Horror does it too, but that card's pretty much only in Cube Hunter.
And it's really just because of Giggling Inventor
Yes. Yeah, it's like
to speak to its impact.
definitely. It's like gives Hunter this because Hunter's trying, that deck's trying to make like these medium-sized minions and just sort of like chunky with them, and Giggling Inventor's amazing against that strategy
Oh, it's
because
so good.
like when you don't have that many minions that you're willing to attack with, maybe two or three, like Giggling Inventor is giving you 2 or 3 turns. It's just it's buying so much time for you to draw cards and play threats and advance your game plan. Mossy Horror, the deck has to run it because of how prevalent Giggling Inventor is in. It's in like most defensive decks and most aggressive decks, but it also has the incidental synergy of killing your Devilsaur Egg, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, this is true.
So it's actually a really good fit for that deck, but I don't think it would be in the deck if Giggling Inventor wasn't around.
Yeah, and the point is it's tough to get value on Giggling Inventor. It usually gives the person who played a card advantage.
Totally. Yeah, it's really like it buys, yeah, it gives them time, it gives them just a really amazing deal on cards and mana. It's pretty incredible. Like 4 attacks to deal with all the minions on the board, at minimum is really something. There are like not a lot of decks that just kind of have 4 small, medium to medium sized minions sitting around. Like
Hmm.
one deck that can deal with this reasonably well is like, or maybe is the most equipped to deal with it, is Odd Paladin, but they're certainly going to lose a bunch in the process. So the card is great against them.
Yeah, Odd Paladin still doesn't want their opponent to play Giggling Inventor. I mean, like, if they have no buffs, the Annoyatrons are actually extraordinarily good against Silverhand
Yes,
recruits.
definitely.
And so yeah, it's this neutral card that is in many decks that's making them very strong. It's in a bunch of the Druid decks. It's got to be in like the control Warlock decks that aren't even. I don't know if it's in Zulok or not.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure about that either. I feel like
Uh,
Zulok is too low to the ground.
but it's I think it's like as much as Cube Hunter can lose to it, Cube Hunter will use it. Like almost any deck can use it. It's also really big in Odd Rogue. It's amazing in Odd Rogue.
Yeah, that was really like Odd Rogue kind of came back because of this card. It
And
just does so much.
Taunt Warrior also is so much better with Giggling Inventors in it.
Oh yeah, I can
Like
see that.
Giggling Inventor and Super Collider just that turned that deck on, I think.
So it doesn't trigger the quest for Taunt Warrior though, right? Does it?
I meant Control Warrior or
Control Warrior, I see.
the Odd Warrior. That's really the word I wanted was Odd Warrior. Just Fatigue Warrior. So many different ways to refer to that deck, and I
It's
used
true,
the wrong
yeah.
one. But yeah, Fatigue Warrior, something like Giggling Inventor to buy time and Super Collider to turn time into card advantage. That's Fatigue Warrior stuff.
Yeah, this card is incredible. I mean, it's like, so as a defensive tool, that's what I had spent a lot of time talking about, how many attacks it takes to kill it. But as an aggressive tool, this puts 3 bodies on the board, and a lot of the aggro decks right now are swarm decks. So Token Druid, which is maybe the strongest of the Nourish shells, is, that is a swarm deck. It just wants to have a bunch of minions. It doesn't really care what they are. They can be 1/1 Wisps, or they could be 1/2 Divine Shield Taunts. So
It's according to VS the highest win rate deck in the game right now.
yeah, that's not too surprising. The deck is like, it's completely broken. You make an unkillable board from hand. Like, it's just crazy.
And then you just sit there with Savage Roars and Branching Paths.
Right, you give your opponent 1 turn to deal with like a bunch of minions that death rattle into other minions, and like if they don't, they lose. That's a broken deck.
Some of them might be 1/2 Divine Shield Taunts.
Yeah, like come on. Just play Hearthstone, don't play Yu-Gi-Oh!
And then actually, I was gonna point out the giggling inventor is a lot like Swords of Revealing Light.
Speaking of, yeah, it buys you a lot of time. But in
Yeah.
the case of the aggro decks, like it puts all these bodies on the board that synergize with Raid Leader because that's a standard playable card, and Savage Roar and like Power of the Wild and all of these types of effects, and it's just really good.
Cold Blood for sure too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, very good with Cold Blood. This card has made Blood Knight a viable tech.
That's
So
another way it's impactful. These cards that just would not get played like Blood Knight are now like all over the place. Mossy Horror showing up in decks.
yeah,
There's also Quest Rogue loves this card too.
yeah,
If you
totally.
like Giggling Inventor as a 2/1 and your Neutrons as 1/2s, boy, you would love it with all 4/4 stats.
Jesus, yeah.
That was what I was doing before Priest, and it's so gross.
I had somebody do that against me. Like they played a bunch of 4/4 Noitrons, and it's just you can't. You're not winning. You're not beating that.
It's
Um,
really, really difficult to beat that for any
yeah.
deck.
So this is clearly a strong card. You know, the most. It's like in 37% of decks. It's just the most
Wow,
commonly played card. Yeah, I know. Isn't that crazy?
that's nuts.
Yeah,
Yeah, oh, I
that
see
is a
that. Yeah,
huge number. So this is obviously one of the most impactful cards in Standard. Even if it isn't like warping the metagame, it probably is in some way. Um, but even if it's not, that's okay. It's still really strong, really prevalent, and great in a ton of different types of decks.
I wouldn't. I would be very surprised if there weren't some noticeable differences if this card were like banned or something, or just suddenly evaporated or had never been created.
Yeah, if they raise the cost to 6, I think that would have a huge impact on Hearthstone metagame. I think a bunch of the strongest decks would, like Odd Rogue, would reduce in power considerably.
And maybe even more lock would be like, ooh, 6 for a Giggling Inventor.
Oh my gosh. What do you say about moving on
Yeah, tell me
to
a
another
card.
card? So the next up, I think it's very related to Giggling Inventor. It is Baku, the Moon Eater.
Yep, I also have Baku.
So this is improved hero powers are really good. So when I first saw Baku, I thought of Justicar. I think that's a pretty obvious comparison. A lot of people did, and
Hmm.
Justicar saw play in Warrior pretty much exclusively as a way for Warrior to just armor up infinitely. So when I saw Baku, I thought immediately of a control deck. So how can we get this into Warrior and make them armor up a whole lot? Turns out the first iterations of viable Baku decks were not that. They were actually aggro decks. So Odd
Hmm.
Paladin came up pretty early, and its list was not optimized for an incredibly long time.
And partly because the optimized list has Raid Leader in it.
Yeah, right? I mean, it's running a bunch of cards that are just garbage. Like, I remember seeing these lists thinking, like, that can't be right.
Yeah, like early on, people didn't have raid leader, and then as time passed, people were like, "No, increase the number of raid leaders in your deck." And then the instinct is like, "Hold on, that's not what we're supposed to be doing here. We're supposed to be
Yeah,
cutting raid leaders out of our decks. That's how this game works. That's always what I've done. Every time I make a deck and it's got raid leaders in it, the more I can take out, the better."
right, exactly. I want to
So
take out
it's
all 5.
very, yes, counterintuitive. Odd Hunter was also a thing for at least a few days.
Yeah, I mean, the improved hero powers are really good. It means, like, in a lot of cases, the improved hero power is worth a card. And that is a whole lot of value to tack on to something that you just always have in your hand. It just, in the case of Rogue, it might as well say, like, 2 mana, equip a 2/2 weapon, draw a card. That is unbelievable.
That's a good card.
Yeah, that card would see a ton of play. Like, if
They should give
Warrior
that
had
to
that.
Priest.
Yeah, really? I would love that by the light. So Baku's had an immense impact in that it just created a ton of archetypes, and it's in a bunch of decks because it makes the decks possible. So it really is
Hmm.
truly the centerpiece of these odd decks, which have been, on the controlling end of the spectrum. We have Odd Warrior, which now definitely has some lists, but we also have the fastest decks in Hearthstone right now are odd decks like Odd Rogue in particular, but also Odd Paladin. So I think it just
Hmm.
deserves to be on this list. It'd be inappropriate to exclude it.
Yeah, Odd Rogue and Odd Paladin are both above 50% win rate and are doing well
Is
and are valid decks. Wait, what's up?
is Baku on your list?
Yes, Baku is on my list for sure.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's really good.
And then also, Odd Warriors actually got it's in tier one with a 53% win rate. That's awesome to see.
Yeah, it is pretty cool to see that. They got a whole lot of tools out of Boomsday, like the sort of this mech synergy that is more incidental than central. It's not like they're playing a fair mid-range deck with a bunch of mechs in it. They're kind of playing a control deck where they have good mechs and they happen to have stuff that creates mechs.
But it works out, and Boom can be huge.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so it's pretty cool to see these types of decks. I mean, deck building constraints are really interesting, and this
Hmm.
is a cool one because it's not like you have to, unlike most other deck building constraints, it's not like you have to use a small set of cards, like a package in your deck, like say a pirate package or a murloc package, and then
Hmm.
build around that package. It's just telling you that, half of the cards in your collection you can't use, just like an arbitrary half of them.
Well, yes, that's a really good point because you're right. Things like the Jade package are so restrictive.
Yes.
Um, like if you wanted to make, and that's true for a lot of the cuter strategies like the hand buff paladin stuff. Like as much as there's plenty of minions, there were really only a few things that buffed all the minions in your hand.
Right.
So you would be locked into using these small sets of cards for sure, as you were saying. And then this is very close to 50%, but actually another cool thing just about Gen and Baku is that class by class, it won't be 50% perfectly, right?
Oh, no, yeah, it's probably between 40 and 60.
But that's cool. That like
Yeah.
Baku, how good is it in this class versus how good is Gen? That changes from class to class in a really cool way. I
And
think.
wildly.
Yeah, one reason Odd Rogue is so good is because they got a lot of really good one cost cards that work perfectly with what they need to do. Same for three, and or even Warlock. They've just got a lot of really nice even cost cards.
Oh
And
yeah, they have
and
one particular really excellent even cost card that costs 10 mana.
yes, sure, that card's pretty good. Um, so yeah, so it's not just the hero power though. Like certainly another reason even Warlock is good is because the hero power is so awesome. But it's also like the pools are like unique in these ways. Um, but yeah, Baku's just all over the top decks in Hearthstone.
Yeah, it's
Definitely
like
a
I said,
huge
it'd be
impact.
inappropriate to exclude this card. This is clearly an impactful card. It's like it's literally creating the most powerful decks in Hearthstone right now. It's just like the reason that they're viable decks and they don't look drastically differently is because of Baku.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know. I would definitely. I guess I'm saying I'd be happy if Baku wasn't helping Rogue out at least. I'm very happy with Baku's contribution to Warrior because I love Fatigue Warrior, but usually I'm playing a deck that just gets housed by Odd Rogue, unless I'm playing Odd Rogue. But usually I'm just getting smashed by Vicious Fledglings.
yeah, I mean that improved hero power is really really unbelievable.
It
Like
is amazing.
yeah, when you think about all you're getting for just on your hero power, it's crazy. The 2 mana 2/2 weapon draw card, like that's what you're getting, and that's pretty unreal to just always have in your hand. Um, and it works out really well because every other turn is an even turn, and you want to use your hero power every other turn. So it's like works excellently.
Hench Clan Thug was a big pickup too. That could have maybe
Definitely.
been on a list here. It's not on mine.
No, it's not on mine either, but it is a really excellent card. And I think it's part of the reason that the Odd Rogue deck is so powerful. Just being able to play that on 3 and turn it into a 4/4 with a 1 drop, like it's really hard to beat that opener.
Yeah, because if you don't, it's because if you don't answer it, it's sort of like with Fledgling.
Yeah,
Like
it's a
if
lot like fledgling.
you don't take care of it, then it just becomes an unsolvable problem.
Yeah, it also becomes
Are
like
you ready
harder
for
to
my next
answer than
card?
fledgling because 4/4 also resists Shadow Word Pain and is just larger than 3/3. So
Uh, I think my internet might have just cut out or something.
um, it also becomes harder to answer than fledgling, right when it hits the board because 4/4 is larger than 3/3, right? And it can't get Shadow Word Pain, for example.
Yes, this is true.
So how about you lead us up with your next card?
I would love to. I've got Zilliax.
Cool.
So I don't know how frequently this card is getting played, but I'm certain of its significance in the decks it's in. Like Taunt Warrior, not Taunt Warrior. Though I guess it isn't that, but I keep meaning Fatigue Warrior. Um, and Cube Hunter. It's a very significant piece in both of these decks for fighting aggressive decks. And it also has a bunch of late game potential because of Magnetize. So it just plays a bunch of different roles in those decks. And it's probably in some like other Hunter decks. It might be in um, it might be in something else. But I
Yeah,
think that even if it's not being main decked, it also shows up off of Stonehill Defenders,
that's true.
and
That's a really good point.
it is really meaningful mech to have available that can really change. Like the a big part of why Cube Hunter can even be a thing is because if you get a giant mech out, you can lifesteal off of it potentially.
Yeah, it is definitely so. Ziliax is not on my list, but I completely agree. This is an incredibly powerful card that has seen a lot of play since it came out and exists as a centerpiece in a bunch of decks, or maybe, if not as central as a card like Baku. Um, definitely a really powerful draw that's situationally a great aggressive tool, but also an excellent catch up and defensive tool.
I was when I was playing Cube Hunter, that was another reason I wanted to have Stitch Tracker is to pick this guy up more often if I could.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like that sort of tutor is really good with a card like this that is like situationally great, but not just a card you want to play on 5 mana just because you have 5 mana. Like you want to play it to answer something or play it to deal a ton of damage from hand. Um, so with a card like Stitch Tracker that can improve the power of your conditional minions, it's really good.
Yeah, it's not just ubiquitously amazing on 5 mana. It's not Giggling Inventor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Giggling Inventor, which is just like, man, I need a defensive tool. I need an aggressive tool. I have 5 mana to spend. Like Giggling Inventor, awesome in all cases.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, and also Ziliak's really good with Giggling Inventor.
That was my final point is that it actually is great with one of the other really important cards.
Yeah, I think that is a huge selling point for it. Is that those two will pretty much always. Well, if you're playing Ziliax, you're definitely playing Giggling Inventor, not necessarily the other way around.
Yeah.
But it is having synergy with one of the strongest cards in Hearthstone right now is a really good thing. It works towards you.
It don't hurt.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It was a card that I think I underestimated a bit. It seemed like it costed just a bit too much.
I agree.
It turns out that, I mean, I think, reflecting on it, 4 would have been completely inappropriate. 5 makes a lot of sense.
I did think of Chill Blade Elite. That's
Yeah.
the Paladin 4 mana 3/2 charge, not rush, with lifesteal. But it doesn't have Taunt and Divine Shield.
Right. Yeah, Divine Shield's huge on this card. I mean, I think Argent Squire, the 4/6, the 4/2, 6 mana 4/2 with Divine Shield and Charge, that card has seen like fringe play and
Argent
is always
Commander.
Argent Commander. I see. Did I say Squire?
Yeah, that's the one.
That's the one. Yeah. Okay, Argent Commander. Right. Yeah, the Commander has seen fringe play, but has always been a really strong pickup in Arena, and is just like a good card. If you've ever like not had Leroy and you needed a charge, like that's a fine card to put in your deck.
It's been in even Warlock lists and even Shaman lists, which basically face that exact scenario. They're like, I
Right.
want a charge minion, but 5 is an odd number. What do I do?
Yeah.
Add 1 to it. But I also I underestimated the taunt on Ziliax. I didn't appreciate how it basically would always, or at least very frequently, be about like fighting for the board, and having this 3/2 taunt lifesteal is like actually great, and
Yeah.
messes up their plans. Like a 3/2 taunt is really annoying.
Oh, yeah.
It messes them up because it doesn't have 1 health. Like if it had 1 health, it'd be very different because hero power would clear it. But since that isn't the case, it can really gum things up, and that was another way in which I also underestimated it. I almost thought the taunt was like something that made it worse. I didn't.
Yeah,
I
I
didn't
thought
think
so
about
too.
how it would be used in real Hearthstone.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I see what you're saying about 3/2 taunt being really annoying, and I guess like people are pretty used to clearing. I mean, Tar Creeper is really annoying, and that had 3 power, and the 3 power is part of the reason that Tar Creeper is so annoying.
Indeed.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. What do we say we move on?
Yeah, give me your next card, Bart.
So my next card also costs 5. It is Fungalmancer.
Ooh, okay. I do not have Fungal Mancer.
So Fungalmancer is similar to Giggling Inventor in at least one respect, in that it is an excellent tool for aggro decks. It
Mm-hmm.
is not really good for defensive decks, but Fungalmancer is a card that I saw and really didn't think was strong enough. It like completely flew under my radar, and then
Mm-hmm.
I started seeing it show up in decks, and I started getting wrecked by it. Um,
Before I saw it in any decks, I had opened. I remember going through my cards and being like, ugh, I've opened two golden fungal mancers. I wish I had opened better golden cards. That
wow.
I remember having that thought before anyone started using the card. But yeah, I also
That rules.
really underestimated it.
I mean, you have two golden
But
Fungalmancers.
now
That's
I just have
amazing.
two golden fungal mancers. Yeah.
So this is part of the reason it's impactful is that I think that this is one of the huge enablers of swarm strategies.
Yes.
So like one of the reasons you can get away with running like 14 one-drops or whatever you're running in Zoolock is because you have Fungalmancer topping out your curve. You have this card that like any 2 minions I have on the board, I'm going to play this one card and it's going to make them into huge threats. It's going to do it the turn that I play this card. I'm not going to have to wait a turn cycle. I'm going to just be able to get value out of this card immediately, and it's going to create a huge problem for my opponent. And
Mm-hmm.
like it's on turn 5. 5 is not like you're not even in board wipe territory yet on turn 5 unless you're Warlock. So
Yeah.
but even Warlock's board wipes are not, they're gonna have a hard time dealing with Fungal Mass minions. So it's really it really does a whole lot and presents a pretty big problem on curve.
It's giving you like four charge essentially, plus the
Yeah,
2/2 body. And since you're using Fungal Mancer, having a 2/2 body is good. You can always Fungal Mancer.
totally.
So in addition to getting like a Blessing of Kings, but divided, you also get a body. Um, it's in a ton of the best decks. It's
Yes.
not in token Druid, I don't think, because
No, I
Druid
don't think
cards
so
are
either.
just too good. But it's an
Yeah,
odd
that list is really
rogue
tight.
and an odd paladin and Zulak.
Zulak.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to play an aggressive deck and you can fit odd minions in your deck, you probably want one or more Fungalmancers. Yeah, I mean the token Druid list is just like it's so tight because so many of Druid cards are unbelievable. You don't need to run something as good as Fungalmancer.
But yeah, it's the ultimate punish for leaving your board up. So it's like, yeah, the perfect incentive to try and swarm with fireflies and things of that nature.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's another reason why it's so good is that like a lot of in Hearthstone, a lot of like the best cards are cheap. Um, and Fungalmancer synergizes really well with that. I think Firefly is one that didn't make my list, but almost did.
Yeah,
Uh,
me too.
yeah, it's at the top of my runner-ups. I mean, it's just one of the best one drops they've ever printed.
And it's great with Fungalmancer. He
Yep.
doesn't need any other friends for that party.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a card that I think at least deserves some level of mention. It's being played quite a lot. You know, like you mentioned, um, this is in a lot of decks. You know, we named 3 of them that it's in
Yeah, the
potentially.
odd aggressive decks and Zulak.
Yes. But like those are also some of the most common decks on the ladder.
Oh yeah.
So like this card's really just in a ton, like card for card is in a lot of the decks that are on the Hearthstone ladder right now. Not just, unique decks, but decks in total, weighted by the frequency.
It's also pretty good with Giggling Inventor.
Yeah, exactly. Like it synergizes really well with that. So if only Giggling Inventor costed 4, then it'd synergize even better.
Oh my. I'm glad we
Yeah, I
don't
know.
live there.
Same. It would be simple. You just make the Inventor a 1/1, right?
Yeah,
I'm
and play it
kidding.
in even luck.
It sounds amazing. Yeah, no, that they should not do that. Yeah, I'm willing to move on from Fungalmancer.
It is pretty funny though how grossly I underestimated it, and then here we are saying it's one of the most impactful cards in Standard.
Yeah, same.
But that just goes to show how meaningful it is to get those buffs right away. And I think another part of it is that it's attack and health. It's not just like one stat. Like
Yeah,
attack would be cute, um, but the fact that your minions get more durability is like just insane.
yeah.
Um,
Charge is really good.
yes. Carnivorous Cube.
Ah, that's really good.
Yeah, that I mean, I didn't need to think long to come up with that one.
Another 5-drop.
It's just 5 mana neutral minions. That's like all we've got. Fungal Mancer, Giggling Inventor, Ziliax, Carnivorous Cube, and then I
Yep.
guess you mentioned Baku. But wow,
Yeah.
this is maybe a little some vanilla problems going on. Um, Cube is not like as dominant, I guess, as it had been when Cube Block was like the best deck, but
Yeah.
it's still Cube Block is definitely still a thing that's strong, and Cube Hunter is also definitely a thing that's really strong, and both of them rely pretty heavily on Carnivorous Cube. Like I don't even think Cube Hunter would be a deck really if it weren't for Carnivorous Cube. It's all about how it can truly capitalize on a really, really powerful death rattle. And Carnivorous Cube is that. It's the really powerful death rattle. So all your play deads and the 3/3 guy Terror Scale Stalker, they're just so much. They're not good cards anymore without Carnivorous Cube. So that deck just disappears, and that's a very strong, popular deck in Standard right now.
Yeah,
And
Carnivorous
then
Cube is
Cube Lock also, I think, is even if it's not super popular, its existence is affecting the metagame.
certainly. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's Q block still exists as a viable option. You can still queue up with it and win games, even if it's not one of the best decks on the ladder. Q block at least used to appear in Taunt Druid.
Yeah, oh, I forgot about Hadronox Druid that's gone down in popularity. There's the Togwaggle Druid and
Yeah.
Token Druid have, I guess just Token Druid. I don't see Togwaggle on this list. But yeah, Taunt Druid would at least sometimes, if not always, use Cube on Hadronox.
Yeah, it definitely. So it looks like a bunch of the current builds are also using Cube. So it is really showing up in a lot of decks that have a good death rattle or have some kind of death rattle synergy. So that was a really excellent card to bring up. That's actually not something that flew under my radar. I didn't even consider adding that to my list, but maybe if I did, I would have replaced something for it. It is really excellent and has historically, like since its conception, been a really key player in the metagame. If initially only in Warlock, but now it's really pretty ubiquitous. It's in a lot of different classes.
I would say it's a Hearthstone All-Star at this point.
It seems like
it. I don't think it should go into any kind of Hall of Fame, like, to nerf it. Like, as I was speaking, I realized that the Hall of Fame is a thing. But it should go in some kind of Hall of Fame to, like, be honored. Along with some other cards, probably. But
Yeah.
it's not just, like... It's not Firefly. Like, Firefly, you just pay 1 mana and you get your minion, then you pay another mana and you get your other minion. That's it. It's very... an idiot can play a Firefly and get what they need out of it. It can be really tough to get what you need out of a cube, and you can get some really cool stuff out of a cube. It's a lot more nuanced of a card, and I think when it came out, it was also underestimated and not immediately picked up and not obviously good.
Yeah, it's hard to know. So, like with a lot of sort of completely new archetypes, it's hard to know whether their lack of existence was because they lacked cards or because they just weren't discovered yet. And I think Cube Hunter is one example of that.
An example where it's not clear?
Yeah, it's not clear where it's not clear whether the deck's lack of existence was because it just didn't have the cards or because people hadn't tried it.
Yeah, prior to Boomsday. It got
yes, yeah.
It got Ziliax, but it might not have really gotten much else. So
yeah, and I mean also prior to when did Kathrina come out?
That was Witchwood.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it definitely needs Kathrina to function. So, then I guess in Witchwood there was kind of a Cube Hunter deck, but it did come around a little bit late. It wasn't like a week 1 deck.
Yeah, it was. I'm pretty sure it was only in the last month or two that it was doing anything.
So it's But yeah, I mean, Carnivorous Cube is a centerpiece in that kind of strategy. It's really like you said, it's got a lot of play to it. I remember, on game like 100 of Cube Block, I was still figuring out cube lines with like Umbra and stuff like that. It's just it makes for some really degenerate plays.
So it's clearly impacting Standard right now.
Oh yeah, Yeah, I think it's totally worth mentioning that card.
It looks like it's
Um,
not that high on the frequency of being played list. Let me see if I can search it. Carniv. It's in 10%.
yeah,
That's actually still pretty good. But
that is pretty high.
it's not 37%. But 10 is
No, it's not
definitely still
37.
pretty great. That's pretty
Yeah, so
significant.
it's like in the decks that play it, it's super important, but those are not necessarily the most powerful or the most common decks, but they're still strong.
And Cube Hunter, I mean, VS at least thinks Cube Hunter is
Oh yeah,
amazing.
that is certainly one of the most powerful decks.
And I would agree with them on that.
Yeah. So, what do you say we move on?
Yeah, I picked Cube, so it's your turn.
Sure. Next up, I have another 5-drop, but this one's not neutral. This is Nourish.
That came really close.
Yeah.
I almost picked Nourish. That's my eighth pick.
I think Nourish was my 7th, or it was my 6th or my 7th. So this is the most common Druid card. This ekes out 0.2% on Wild Growth and appears in 92.8% of Druid decks, at least as of yesterday on HS Replay. So this is across all ranks, Wild Growth being 92.6%.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an incredibly common card. It's basically in every single Druid deck.
It's the most common class card in Standard.
Oh, is it really? That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm looking, and every card above it is neutral. The very first card in popularity that isn't neutral is Nourish, followed by Wild Growth and Branching Paths and Swipe, unless there's Jasper Spellstone.
Oh boy. So this is, it's just, you don't need to say a whole lot. It's obvious. This is like so when UI came out, this card moved from being like, maybe 60% draw spell, 40% ramp to being like an 80% ramp, 20% draw.
Yep.
But it has the backup plan of being an incredibly powerful draw spell. So if you happen to have a dead hand, like if your hand just doesn't have Ultimate Infestation in it, or you don't have Branching Paths and you just have a bunch of dumb stuff, you can just Nourish on 5 for cards and get a bunch of stuff and then start to actually play your game out. But if you do have those other things, if you do have Branching Paths and UI in your hand, you just Nourish for mana and get closer and closer to playing these cards.
It's so perfect because at the point of the game where you wouldn't want the mana, you would probably want cards instead, and that's exactly what it does.
Yeah, that's the other thing is like, even if so now we can talk, I just talked about, mid game where you have this really awesome fallback plan with Nourish. We'll talk about the late game where like you're running this ramp spell in your deck, it's turn 14 and you draw Nourish, you just draw 3 cards with it.
Yeah, normally, you, at least in Magic, you get punished when you draw your ramp spells late game, but not in this game.
No, not
Wild
in
Growth
Hearthstone.
you can cycle, and Nourish you can, cycle on steroids.
Yeah, it's a really incredibly powerful card.
It would probably, if it said gain 2 mana crystals or draw 1 card, it would probably still be in a lot of decks.
Yeah, I think right now in this UI world it definitely would.
Which is crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah, it's a or if it said draw 2 cards, I think it'd be like this Spring Blade nerf. It just wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, so it is a class card, right?
It is a class card.
So it's kind of like, how do we measure how impactful it is?
Yeah, so it's tough to it's a class card. How do we measure how impactful it is? Druid is one of the most powerful decks right now, and all of the Druid decks play the same way. I mean, in fact, earlier in this call, I called it a Nourish deck. It's a deck that is ramping into a strong late game, and then just trying to use the fact that it has a ton of mana available to it to play either a bunch of cards to make an unbeatable board, as in Token Druid, or to play, a few huge cards that make an unbeatable situation, like Master O card or Hadronox.
So it's in Druid, it's like the most important piece, or maybe the most impactful piece, or the best piece of that main Druid strategy. And then Druid is just really, really impactful on the ladder.
Yeah, it's if not the most impactful card in Druid, which is that's hard to argue, but maybe not. I mean, it is the most common class card. It is central. None of these decks would cut so many other cards, including Ultimate Infestation, before they cut Nourish.
And it's just so good in the deck.
Yeah, it just does everything you want it to do. So I think that for that reason, Nourish appeared on my list as just this sort of unassuming, enormously powerful enabler. that is, potentially deserving of some rebalance. It's not like this is specific to the post Ultimate Infestation metagame. Nourish has always been in Druid decks. Like even pre-UI, back when people were running J Druid with Auctioneer, it ran Nourish.
Right. And
So
Token Druid's the highest win rate deck right now, so it's hard not to include some Druid cards.
oh yeah, most certainly. So this is a cool one.
But like we've been talking all about neutral cards, and
Yes.
it's easier to understand why a neutral card would be one of the most impactful cards. But I agree with you that Nourish, you know, just because of how strong it is in the deck and how strong and popular the deck is, it's got to count.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning. This is like a nod to Druid, as to how powerful this is. What do you
Yeah.
say we move on?
I will move on to another nod because I picked Spreading Plague.
Oh, that was I cut that one last minute from my list.
I was thinking about it, and I feel like what the most degenerate Druid decks do is really like all because of Spreading Plague. So
Yeah, I agree with you.
you basically just get to sit on your behind and like accelerate your mana and draw cards, maybe get armor here and there, but like you don't even really have to, and make this amazing hand. And the better your opponent does, the more you punish them when you play Spreading Plague.
Yeah, it's really fantastic. So this was this was one of the first cards that I had, like when I was putting together my list and just writing down cards I thought were good. This is one of the first ones I thought of.
Oh,
I mean, I agree with you. Like even at 6 mana, the nerf did basically nothing to it. The card is incredible. It's just as good on 6 as it is on 5. It does not like whatever. On
very
5,
very minor. You could argue putting it to 4 would have nerfed it more because then you couldn't play the free 4/4 with it.
that's true.
That's
Yeah.
another reason that Spreading Plague is so good is you get to play Arcane Tyrant for free
Yeah.
after you cast it, and Nourish,
very good.
right?
Yeah, and that's also like truly disgusting. Playing Tyrant off Nourish is gross. But yeah, so Spreading Plague like definitely punishes a lot of the most popular aggressive strategies right now. Particularly because they're trying to amass a board filled with like small to medium small minions. Medium small being like Zulok and small being like Odd Paladin.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, even if Odd Paladin has buffed its board with level up, Spreading Plague still kind of owns them.
Yeah, it's gonna absorb a ton of attacks. The minions will take damage that can like set you up to like Starfall them or something like that. But if you're playing Togwaggle Druid, it gives you the time you need to blast your opponent's deck. If you're playing Token Druid, it gives you a huge board to buff. It just does a huge amount of work in these decks.
Yeah, if you're playing Token Druid, it lets you crack back for lethal.
Yeah, you just could like win. I think part of the reason decks use Void Ripper sometimes is because of cards like Spreading Plague, so it's like affecting like specific cards in people's decks. And just like I just like these Druid decks would really rather get rid of other stuff before Nourish. Maybe not Taunt Druid, because Taunt Druid needs to avoid using Spreading Plague. But the other Druid decks, like Token Druid, would really hurt if they lost Spreading Plague. And maybe even something like Togwaggle Druid would like be much less realistic, I think, without that card.
Yeah, because in a way, it like Druid's good at everything. That's its class identity, and this
it's
covers
the best
a really
at everything. That's the class
that's
identity.
right. Yeah, my mistake. I'm sorry. Druid is the best at everything.
A natural
and that's
mistake.
its class identity. But Spreading Plague covers like its one potential weakness, which is if you're spending all your mana drawing cards and getting mana, you might not have a board, but actually you do because Spreading Plague.
Yeah, they were like, oh wait, Druid has one potential weakness. Let's
right.
turn it into a strength instead.
Yeah, exactly. Let's make the fact that they haven't played a single minion all game into a good thing for them.
Oh my, yeah, it's crazy how good this card is, and
it's truly unreal.
Yeah, the 1 mana. I mean, they had to do something, but you're right. It's still crazy how good it is at 6 mana, and because you're playing cards like Branching Paths and Nourish and Ultimate Infestation, you can like more consistently hit it. So I think that it just plays a really big role in Druid, which is playing a big role in the meta.
Oh yeah. I think it's totally worth mentioning. It's actually fantastic how much they underestimated the power of 1/5 taunts. They like valued it very explicitly at under 2 mana with Druid of the Swarm, and
Right.
or at roughly 2 mana, but it's just worth probably like 2 point something mana.
Oh,
It's really a lot.
yeah, it's called a scarab beetle. I recently learned the 1/5 taunts.
Oh, I thought it was called a concede because that's always what I see after my opponent plays it.
Well, I guess you could call it concede beetles. But so, do you know what the poison spiders are called? The ones that DK Malfurion makes and webweave?
No,
Frost Widow.
I would never
You
guess that.
never guess that they both say create 2/1/2 poisonous spiders, but
Yeah.
the minion on the board, and this is because I've been trying to code the Python Hearthstone. They're not called poisonous spiders in
No,
uh in the game. They're called frost widows.
I would have never
How
guessed
weird
that.
is that?
That
I
is
had
really weird.
no idea. I played Malfurion so many times. Granted, I definitely take the 1/5s more often than the poison, but I must have
Definitely.
taken them at least 10 times in my life, if not more. No idea what they were called.
Yeah. Yeah, that's same. That's really interesting. I had no idea.
And then, yes, Scarab Beetle is the 1/5s because just Scarab, that's what the 7/7 in Warrior made. There's an old Warrior card that's like an 8 mana 7/7 every turn make a 1/1 taunt. It's a
Oh, Mr.
1/1
Scarabs,
Beetle.
I see. Okay. Interesting.
Oh no, it was a
Yeah,
1/1 Scarab, but it was one word instead of two.
right. Yeah, I mean that's I think they sort of drastically underestimated how valuable 1/5 taunt is. I mean, easy to do that. Easy to do that given that the metagame is so swarm focused right now. But so in a way, it's like we couldn't really blame them, but it's super powerful.
It is a product of the meta, but I think also they underestimated how good something like Branching Paths is with a board full of
Yeah,
1/5s.
right, totally. Oh yeah, I mean, it's actually unreal in that like branching paths, spreading play can actually just be a win condition in any deck,
Hmm.
and like pretty much all the decks that are running one run the other.
So you
So
just have this like way to win / never lose an aggro game in addition to the other stuff you're doing. Yeah.
yes, yeah, it's really like it's hilarious. That class is just too strong by a lot. Um, so
Uh,
what do we say we move on?
yeah, I picked just now, so you
Sure. Next up, I have another druid card, one that I think you probably do not have on your list, and that's Naturalize.
I do not, but that's a great choice. That's a good
So
point.
I was thinking about it, and this card isn't modal, but it might as well be. This is like one of the most modal, non-modal druid cards that is in the game. Because druid's class identity is, of course, they're the best at everything, but also all their cards do multiple things. Even their cards that don't do multiple things still do multiple things. So Naturalize is a hard removal spell that costs 1 mana. So just to get an idea of what destroy target minion costs, look at Assassinate.
That's 5.
5. Look at Siphon Soul. That's 6. So Naturalize is 1. And like, yeah, okay, it has a downside. But is it a downside? Its downside actually lets you win more reliably in Fatigue. So one of the problems that Druid has is if you are drawing a whole bunch of cards and your opponent manages to deal with all the stuff that you've done, which is nearly impossible, but it is possible. They can do it. You might lose in fatigue because you'll get there way faster than them.
Mhm.
And that's still pretty much true, but if you're a little bit more conservative with your UIs in like a fatigue game, you can actually naturalize them to get ahead.
Yes.
So you can turn one of your potential weak spots into you can take one of like your strongest removal tools in your deck and use it to cover one of your potential weak spots,
Uh,
which is unreal.
It's crazy because they're as polar opposites in points of the game as you could possibly get. Like
It's true.
the naturalized removal is at its best when they like turn 3 Mountain Giant or turn 2 Coin Fledgling or like turn 1 Squire and then like turn 2 like Double Cold Blood or something like that. It just is like really cheesy, aggressive early minion, which is like the most like dumb early straightforward thing. It beats that, and it also beats the most long drawn out complicated thing possible, which is a game that comes out of fatigue.
Yeah,
And it
definitely.
costs 1.
It's like So those are two of the most amazing things that it does at 1 mana, and then it even enables combos, your carnivorous cube combos.
It does a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, it can pop your cube or your Hadronox. It
It
conveniently
can
costs
punish
only 1 mana, so you can play Hadronox and that in the same turn.
it can punish your opponent if they have too many cards in their hand. So if they're playing a deck like the Zarek's Cloning Gallery big priest deck, like you can punish them really hard by overdrawing them and potentially burning something, but also stopping them from drawing a card the next turn.
Yeah, the naturalized sometimes doesn't have the downside for that reason, if they have too many cards in their hand. And
Yep.
sometimes burning cards from their deck, like if it's a control warlock and you might hit Gul'dan, can be huge. If they have 9 cards, you can burn 2 things. Um, but it also enables another combo, so it enables stuff with Death Rattle, like Carnivorous Cube and Hadronox. You can also, if your opponent has 8 cards in their hand, you can naturalize a minion and then play King Togwaggle. And
That is true.
you'll switch decks and they won't have any room for the King's Ransom. So it actually also enables that combo, in addition to being a nasty card to play in the King Togwaggle deck. Like that, it enables that deck. You're trying to draw your whole deck and then switch decks with your opponent, and then you can. One of the ways the deck can win is by immediately playing 2 naturalizes and doing a ton of burst damage. I think it's like if they would take 15 between the 2 naturalizes and their next draw. And then every draw thereafter, they're going to take 6, 7, 8. So it's also a way to just burst people down. Like, how many things does this
Yeah.
card do?
Yeah, like I said, it's one of the most modal non-modal cards in the game, and of course it's a druid card.
Course.
It's funny because it wasn't, this card wasn't super widely played until probably the last 2 or 3 expansions,
Mm-hmm.
but it totally deserves the spots that it has, and like maybe should have even been played earlier. The downside is just like when you're playing druid, your opponent drawing 2 cards means nothing to you because you can draw so many more than they can.
Yeah, they're not really gonna pull ahead by doing that. They're only gonna pull ahead if they're like aggressive, if they maybe get a more aggressive card
Yeah,
than they
and
already have.
again, this covers a bunch of potential weak spots, like druid's best removal spells other than this, like its removal is actually a little bit high costed, so like swipe is 4 mana for 4 damage, and starfall is like six mana for 5 damage. So they thought like, well, okay, I guess druid is like has a tough time getting hard removal, let's give it a 1 mana hard removal spell.
Mm-hmm.
Like that makes sense. It's a weakness of theirs, let's cover it instantly.
That's always what they do.
Yeah. So this is I thought that this deserved a spot because of how many things it does, and how it covers this really critical weak point that druid has. Like naturalize and spreading plague just cover each other so well.
I'm certain there have been Hadronox Druid games I was playing where I was against a Fatigue Warrior. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna win because I'm gonna play Naturalize. Like, I'll just keep playing cards, and they'll have to answer them, and eventually they'll be way more fatigued than me because I'm gonna force them to draw 4 extra cards.
Yep. So that card is really good.
And it just really, it completely changes how, like, if you want to be a fatigue deck, like maybe Control Mage. Like, Control Mage has to use Skulking Geist. Because if they want to have a game against Druid, they want to reduce the number of naturalizes that are happening. That's one of the most important things to do. That's definitely an impactful Hearthstone card.
Most certainly. Yeah, it is. I think it deserves a spot on this list.
So much Druid, wow.
Yeah. So what's so what do you say we move on to, I think, what would be your 6th card?
Yes.
Or is it your 5th card?
It's my 6th card.
Okay.
Blood Reaver Gul'dan.
Oh yeah, that's my 6th as well.
Oh, how about that? Well, it's a nice switch from Malfurion. This Death Knight is a huge part of why Warlock is good. And even though it's not in Zulok, I still think that it is important to talk about it because it affects what other control decks exist. I think that there would be maybe more Priest and more Paladin trying to do late game things if casting Blood Reaver Gul'dan was not just always better. Like,
Yeah,
it's so much better than so many late game strategies that it's kind of erased them from existence, even if it isn't the strongest deck or the most popular deck. Um, it's because this card is so friggin' strong, and it's also, like, one card being really strong isn't necessarily going to mean that it's very impactful, but we know it's going to be more impactful in Warlock because they draw more cards than other classes. Or at
yeah,
least they draw a lot more than a lot of other classes. So they'll more
except Druid.
frequently see this card.
Yeah, that's true. They so it's when this card came out around Knights of the Frozen was in Knights of the Frozen Throne. Warlock was not doing so well before then. It like wasn't super amazing in class, and then that set was released, and Warlock was kind of everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was not just Gul'dan, but I think Gul'dan was a huge contributor. I think another really important card, for example, is Defile.
Yeah.
And actually, in general, I think all of the Warlock cards in Frozen Throne and like Kobolds are really good.
Yeah, Void Lord,
But
there's a bunch of them.
yeah,
Carnivorous
maybe
Cube.
not. Maybe not. Yeah, certainly.
Very
Just
important
really,
Warlock card.
really, really, really. Yeah, right. These are all really important, but Gul'dan is like, uh, it's actually pretty central. If you look at how a lot of the non-Zoo Warlock decks are built, they're built around this card.
Mm-hmm.
So like, even Lock is running just a huge number of demons that are like good. It's running a bunch of good demons in it, but it might not run like Dread Infernal, the 6-mana demon, if it didn't have Gul'dan.
Yeah, that card
There's
is very much, reward for playing Gul'dan.
Yes, exactly. It's a way for your Gul'dan play to be better later. If Gul'dan wasn't in the deck, like I think you really just would not run that. You might not even run Hooked Reaver. You might run something like better.
Mm-hmm.
So even if Hooked Reaver is quite good, it's like kind of feels a lot like a giant.
I mean, Chillwind Yeti would be better a lot of the time if it weren't for Blood Reaver Gul'dan.
Yeah, exactly, and that's just like completely clearly makes the Hooked Reaver better. So this card is like it is the ultimate reward for going late, which is something that Control Warlock is that Warlock in general is really good at, and Control Warlock decks are excellent at. I mean, they have one of the most amazing board wipe suites of any classes.
Mm-hmm.
Of any class, they have the Defiles and Hellfires, which like deal so elegantly with early game centric decks. And Blood Reaver Gul'dan gives them something to do on 10 mana, but like in addition to just being this enormous swing that they set up throughout the entire game without going too far out of their way, they kind of go out of their way during deck construction and then just play a normal mid-range game to set up Gul'dan. In addition to just being that huge payoff for playing the game, you have this like nearly unbeatable tool in Fatigue.
Yeah, and you would replace something you wouldn't want, right? Your hero power that makes you draw. There's a point where you're like, I don't want to use that. I would like to be able to do damage and heal myself. Like, okay,
Yes.
here you go.
Right. It just turns your hero power into an incredibly strong removal spell, and also just like a bunch of face damage to help try to close the game out. And like, but it also heals you if you happen to be trying to win in Fatigue. Like your opponent's not really going to beat that.
It gives you huge card advantage because you get to deal damage to the minions, so it's really hard for them to make a board. It gives you the 5 armor. It gives you this huge board, and it's not like you lose anything when you sacrifice your hero power, like with Doctor Boom, Planeswalker. A warrior needs to think about it because they might be better off gaining 4 armor every turn, even though they could slam Doctor Boom. That's really never the case, or that is not going to be the case late game for Blood Reaver Gul'dan ever. It's always an improvement.
Yeah,
and that is really what I'm getting at. As much as Cube Lock does stuff with cubes, and Even Lock does stuff with even cards, they're both basically Blood Reaver Gul'dan decks.
yeah. I always felt like that when I was playing Cube Lock. Just getting my Doomguard out of my hand and onto the board and then into the graveyard was like a great thing.
Yes.
I was really stoked to get it killed because I know that I could Gul'dan back later, and like the more Doomguards you have coming out of your Gul'dan, like the more broken that card is.
The more your opponent will be dead when you play it.
Yeah, it's just like it's like another Carnivorous Cube. It does too much. It even gets you armor on the spot, and like in a lot of these decks, you have Void Lords. It's just building an unbeatable board when you play it. Like you thought N'Zoth into Sludge Belchers was good. Let me show you Blood Reaver Gul'dan into Void Lord.
It's a spicy card.
It's super good, and totally deserved of a spot on this list just for really defining so many decks in the Warlock class. Like I don't think even Warlock would be a deck without this card,
Hmm.
but and I think Q Block would not be nearly as good as it is
Well,
without this card.
there would be Zulok still, right?
Zulok certainly, yeah, because Zulok doesn't run this,
But
but
every other Warlock deck would be much worse, if
yeah, it
not
would
just
be
non-existent.
exactly. They'd be hurt or crippled, so it's just unclear what. Yeah, this card can't be excluded from such a list. It's so good.
And there would be other decks, I think, in like Paladin, Priest, Mage, like Control Mage. All these things would just be a lot more meaningful if it weren't like, why not just play Blood Reaver Gul'dan instead of doing all
Yeah,
that work? You could just pay 10 mana and win.
exactly. Like it's you open by saying a lot of these silly combos are sort of just shut down by this kind of card, and that's definitely true. This is just like late game in Hearthstone. There's a huge bar for it now. Like back in the day, you
Hmm.
used to just press armor up and then play 7 mana 7/7s, but we don't live in that world anymore.
We do not.
So you're like we don't even live in the world of like anything. We live in a world of like getting killed with Malagos or getting your deck destroyed and like all of these really ridiculous things
Hmm.
that can happen to you on the 20th turn of the game. But Gul'dan is right up there with all of those powerful things, and it's just one card.
Exactly. There's nothing in Priest that or Paladin or these other potential control classes that stands up to it. So they, why do that when you could do this?
Exactly. What do you say we move on to I guess my last card?
Your last card, what is it?
It's Ultimate Infestation.
Oh, snap!
Yeah.
Is your list mostly Druid cards?
I have 3 Druid cards on my
Okay,
list, yeah.
borderline. That's still pretty
Borderline.
crazy.
Yeah, so Ultimate Infestation is I think Druid would be around if it weren't for this card, and it's even not in some Druid decks right now, which is hard to think about.
It's crazy.
But um, but this is so in a way, I actually don't think this is necessarily as impactful as Nourish, or at least as powerful as Nourish. But I think its impact is clear.
Hmm.
This is a card that, like, when you read it, you have to read it again because it's hard to imagine that that card is doing that much stuff for only 10 mana. And then when the first rounds of post Frozen Throne nerfs came out and Druid got hit really hard, Ultimate Infestation was not hit, and people were like, "What are you doing? Why are you not nerfing this card?" This is it's just to rehash an old discussion. This is an unbelievable amount of value for 10 mana. Like, if you try to put together other cards to make this card, it's something like 17 mana because you need like sprints and 5/5s and all this other stuff, and it just ends up being pretty expensive. So
Yeah.
this is but like in addition to just being a ton of mana in one card, it's also a lot of cards in one card. The effect on its own is worth a bunch of cards, and you're drawing 5. Like,
Plus the 5 other cards that you get.
yeah, plus the other 5 cards you're getting. Like, on top of all the other effects, like just 5 damage, 5/5 minion, 5 armors. Like, a great card. Like, at 7 mana, that'd be a deal. That'd be a deal and a half. But no, you actually just pay 3 more mana and you draw 5 cards.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
right? So this is the reason that Nourish is more of a ramp spell than a draw spell these days, at least in my opinion.
Yeah,
Like,
no, you're right.
And this is why Jade Druid was so oppressive after Knights of the Frozen Throne came out.
Hmm.
It's at least part of it. It replaced the clunky auctioneer package with this one spell that just does it all, and
Mhm.
it's been a part of Druid since it came out, and just completely irreplaceable in a lot of these decks. And very few decks don't run it, and oftentimes the decks that are not running it are not the most powerful Druid decks. They're like Taunt Druid, just sort of alternate, or Big Druid. Even Big Druid runs it. They're just like alternate decks.
Yeah, I think Taunt Druid doesn't run it because it will try to win in Fatigue. And you have a lot of stuff that costs 9 and 10 already.
Yeah.
It's not that you don't nourish into mana in that deck. That's actually still the same. You want to like play Oakheart ASAP. It's just you're playing Oakheart as soon as possible instead of UI as soon as possible.
Yeah, but like Token Druid's running too. A lot of Malagos Druid builds are running
every
too.
other deck is running too.
Spiteful Druid's running too. It's just like it's so central to Druid. Druid would be like, if you took this card out of Hearthstone, Druid's power level would decrease several percent.
Yeah, it would be a huge kick in the naturals for Malfurion, And really, the
Definitely.
only deck that would maybe possibly not be affected is the Taunt Druid deck.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, even early builds of that, or just alternate builds from the Dragon Hatcher build, were running UI.
Hmm.
So it's like very. It's just a super strong card. And yeah, I think most of my list is Druid here. I tried to make that not happen. That's actually why I cut Spreading Plague off the list, but and included Fungalmancer. But this is I felt like I had to put this card on my list. This was like maybe the first card that I thought of. No, first card I thought of was Gul'dan, then this card. But I only thought of Gul'dan because I think the inspiration from this episode for this episode actually came from one of our discussions in a previous episode where I said Blood Reaver Gul'dan is one of the most impactful cards in Standard. Oh, we should do an episode about that.
Yep, that sounds about right to me.
But yeah, UI was like number 2.
So just 10 mana cards.
Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah, you just don't run out of gas. Like,
Yeah,
Druid gets to just do all of its things and convert its cards into more mana crystals sooner, or convert its cards into armor, or convert its cards into a better board, and then refill with Ultimate Infestation, and just not have any consequences for that. Yeah, that's what was happening with Jade Druid that made it really friggin' dumb. Is
oh
that I
yeah,
just
especially because
got to keep jamming the Jade cards and never stop. Just never stop playing Jades.
yeah, yeah, that deck was happy to get to 0 cards in deck because it had Jade Idol.
Yeah, that was some nonsense. So this is definitely what is keeping these Druid decks at such a high win rate.
Yeah, definitely. So what do we say we move on to your last card?
I would love to. How long can this go on? It is Saturday Night Chain Gang.
Really? Oh, cool. Yeah, that's on my runner-ups list.
It's definitely more of a runner-up than it used to be because of the fall of Shutterwalk,
And Giggling Inventor.
and the arrival of Giggling Inventor. But I was looking at the decks that were popular, and it's definitely important in Zulak, and it can be used in a bunch of other decks sometimes.
It's the second most played card, actually. It's in 20% of decks.
Oh, okay. I was actually struggling to think of decks that would use it besides um, Zulak, but it's got to be in something if it's that
Well, I
popular.
mean, the mid-range decks are running it, so the Shutter, pretty much every Shaman deck is running this card.
Oh, right,
Any
there's
deck
Mugen
with
Shaman also. Yeah, sorry.
the decks with Kelesith in them, which are like that's another runner-up of mine, but it's just it's not really that popular right now because of Baku. A lot of the
Hmm.
Kelesith decks are running that. The Cube Hunter's not. That list is kind of tight.
Some
But
might. It's possible that a Cube Hunter or some kind of hunter that's running Kaliseth would use Saturnight.
yeah, totally. It's a really good card. I mean, it's a whole lot of value out of just one card, and like putting down multiple taunt bodies is something that's really powerful and has been really powerful since this came out, just forever.
And it enables a really powerful combo. Like, it's a critical part.
Yeah, definitely.
That deck
So
wouldn't be able to do its thing if it weren't for Saturnight.
it's true. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Shutterwalk absolutely needs it because it's like literally part of
No.
their combo. But it's just a strong play in pretty much every other deck, and it does a really good job of putting down a speed bump for your opponents, like 1/1s or whatever, or 2/2s. They just have to like try to punch past a couple 2/3 taunts. That's gonna buy you time.
It's sort of got a lot of similarities with the Inventor in being defensive and aggressive.
Yes, I agree with
And
that.
it makes Kaliseth is a better card. So it also is impacting how frequently Kaliseth shows up, how good it is with Saronite.
Yeah, I felt like so Kelso didn't make my list because and I feel like this is at least related to Sarnate. He didn't make my list because I feel like he's not central in any of the decks that play him. He's just kind of like a high roll in the decks.
Saronite is more central.
Sarnate's a lot more central. It's doing something like after you play Kelso, Sarnate becomes unbelievable. But even before then, it's like it's a recipient of Fungalmancer if those are two cards you're running in the same deck.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like a really good speed bump for advancing your game plan, or it's central to your game plan as in Shutterwalk. Like it's a cool card that does a lot.
Yeah, I might have been able to find something else arguably more impactful, but I feel better knowing that it's the second most popular Hearthstone card. So
I think it's
I'll stand by
completely
it.
fair to put it on the list. Yeah, I think that's a fair card to put on the list. So I had that with that I kind of grouped that into three cards that didn't make a cut but are in my runner-up. So Tark Reaper, Stonehill, and Sarnite.
Yep.
Um,
The taunters.
right. These are all just neutral taunts in sort of the early to mid game that are speed bumping your opponent. But yeah, I think that's a really strong card.
Yeah, Stonehill. Those cards are all being played, but Saronite seem to, at least right now, be doing a more meaningful thing than Stonehill. If Paladin were popular, I bet it would be the opposite.
Yeah, I feel the same way. That like because of some of these are odd costed and some are even costed, you might not be running all of them. But I think Sarnite is like it's also a little bit more flexible. So it's hard to say that it's more flexible than Stonehill Defender, which gives you a literal choice. But Sarnite is like, in addition to being an aggressive tool, is a good defensive tool. You're kind of trading off on your defensiveness for some aggressiveness.
Hmm.
And putting down multiple minions is really valuable in this metagame where Swarm decks are so popular. So I really like the pick of Sarnite, and it's totally a card that almost made my cut. But I just felt like, I felt like I couldn't put Giggling Inventor and Sarnite, though I could put Nourish, Naturalize, and Ultimate Infestation.
Apparently,
So, I mean, yeah, I don't know.
you didn't design Druid to be the best class.
No, I didn't. That was Ben Brewer specifically and exclusively.
Yes, that was all Benny. So you don't need to admonish yourself over it.
No, I don't feel too bad about it.
I'm glad.
Because I feel like Nourish and Ultimate Infestation are like the same card, but Naturalize is pretty different.
Yeah, that was a really good pick though.
Yeah. This is fun. So another card that I really thought would be your last card is Caverns Below.
Oh. I would in my dreams, in my heart, Odd Rogue, Quest Rogue is that making that much of an impact.
Yeah, no, I understand.
I think that at this point, like the end games of a lot of other classes will beat the 4/4s. So it was hard for me to say that because in the past that was the way Quest Rogue impacted the meta, even if it wasn't getting played a lot. It would just completely hose all of the control decks. And if you queued up as a control deck against Quest Rogue, you would lose. That has changed.
Yeah, I think so too.
The control decks can really do some degenerate stuff, which you were talking about before, how crazy the late game has become. And I can, even though Giggling Inventor being 4/4s is really good, you can beat that with what Taunt Warrior is doing, with Togwaggle nonsense. A lot of these control and combo decks can still actually beat you after you finish the quest.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's more of a historical note, but than an actual Hearthstone impact. It's just funny that like the card that was nerfed twice and is still playable,
Yeah, it's got a positive win rate. It's tier 2 Quest Rogue.
That's pretty high.
That's amazing. I think usually when it was much more hated, it was below 50% win rate. So
yeah, it's pretty funny. But I think that's owing to its beatability. Like the people maybe didn't hate it because it just won every game. They hated it because like it won every certain type of a game.
Mm-hmm.
Like it won every control matchup.
I think that has changed, which is probably a good sign.
I agree. Yeah, I think that the most ideal way to balance the deck would be to take that sort of like win rate distribution. You have like class on the x-axis, then you have win rate on the y-axis, and try to make it more uniform. That's like a nice way to rebalance this.
It seems like that's where it is now, because Giggling Inventor improved its aggro game a bit, but nonsense like Carnivorous Cube and Blood Reaver Gul'dan have weakened its ubiquitous ability to beat control decks. So I think they actually did just what you described.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. But definitely card worth mentioning, and of course Firefly, which we both talked about.
Yeah, that's got to be one of the most played cards, right?
I actually am not totally sure.
Number
but yeah,
6.
How could it not be? Number 6, sure. Yeah. How could it not be? It's just like it's so good. It's one of the best 1-drops they've ever made.
I'm a huge fan. It's great in Quest Rogue.
It's basically like in the decks that play it, it's basically like 1 mana 1/2 draw card. So it's just really good.
Because you just always want another body.
Yeah, you always want like another cheap body. and this is exactly that. It fills out your curve in objects. It's just really good. What do you say we wrap up there?
Let's fly out of here. I think we got over 10 cards.
I think so too. I'm actually really pleased with the lack of overlap in our list.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I kind of like making the list. You think like, oh, these have to have, so these are going to be the same list, but then I think they almost never end up turning out like that when we do this.
Yeah.
So if you like this episode, you can actually find a lot more episodes where we do lists, including our set reviews and probably some other random ones, which you can find links to by looking at our historical Twitter feed, so twitter.com/lastturnhs or facebook.com/lastturnhs if you want to look at a historical sort of advertisement feed. But you can also just look at our podcast library, which you can access all the places where we're hosted on lastturnhs.com. Or if you'd like to go there directly, you can go to iTunes, just search Last Turn there. Is it Last Turn? It's Last Turn. You can find us on Stitcher, and you can also find us on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/lastturn. That is officially where we're hosted. You can also find us on Google Play if that's something you like to use, or get a link to our RSS feed directly from SoundCloud and maybe put it into another podcast app that you like to use, like CastBox.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways you can listen to us. You can also find us on YouTube.
Yes. If you want to tune into any of our set reviews, you'll also have those are animated.
Yeah, definitely. It's fun to those probably have some, posterity to them, right? It's fun to go back and look at how wrong we were.
What do you mean? We're never wrong.
Card valuation stuff.
I wish I had these golden fungalmancers. That's awful.
You're right. I was going to say, Fungalmancer is an amazing example of why card evaluation is hard.
Yeah, but I think we did all right today.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, there's a whole lot of really powerful cards we talked about, and it's tough to narrow down a list of the most impactful cards in Standard, but I think we brought up some that are at least contenders.
And some more subtle ones too, like Naturalize.
Yeah, I think so too. Very interesting. But yeah, we hope you really enjoyed us, and we will catch you guys next turn.
See you next turn.